Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, in which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, and apparently Salem the Cat today, chat to some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and publishing. And today we are delighted to have a very special guest, Tyler Wagner, the founder of Authors Unite, who's here to talk to us about book marketing, which is something a lot of people are really interested in, specifically the way it's been evolving lately. So Tyler, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you both for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh, well, we are very excited to have you. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems and an author himself. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Roland. And thanks again for joining us, Tyler. Like book marketing, book promotion, referral networks, all that stuff is one of those things that authors kind of have to deal with, but often don't want to. But it's part of self-publishing. You don't have somebody to do all that stuff for you these days. So we always have to learn about it. We always have to figure out different ways to do it. And there's so many different ways, so many different companies that can help or not help. But you have a company, Authors Unite, that does a bit of that, publishing and marketing and all that stuff. And you have a lot of experience with this stuff. So that's what we want to talk about today. So why don't you start us off by telling us a bit about yourself and Authors Unite and what you guys do, and then we can go from there.
For sure. So basically, I'll tell the quick story of like the founding of the company, and then I'll tell you guys a little bit more about it. So when I was 19 years old, I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and I took it very literally. And I ended up dropping out of college like a couple weeks after reading that. Before that, I quickly called my counselor. I forget something counselor that I think everybody has at a college. And I said, do we have an entrepreneurship major? And they said, no, but we have a manager major, or management or something like that major. And to me, I was like, it's still inside of a corporation, doesn't make sense to me. So I just really decided to drop out very quickly. And I was like, I'm going to be a public speaker. I'm an outgoing guy. I've done about actually like 2,500 podcasts on my own show interviews. So I love doing this stuff. And I thought I was, going to be like the next Tony Robbins or something, with a lot different look and a lot shorter, but something similar to that. And then I realized very quickly that podcasts are a lot different than on stage in front of 1,000 people or something. So I happen to be very nervous in that environment, and this environment a lot more comfortable. So either way, though, prior to when I knew I wanted to be a public speaker, I had made the realization fairly quickly. I had gone up to Toronto to this conference called Mastermind Talks. And they had like 15 main speakers. Ryan Holiday was one of them. He's in this industry of book marketing. And I think it was something like 12 or 13. Tim Ferriss was the keynote. 12 or 13 of the 15 speakers were best-selling authors. And I'd been to many other conferences, and it just kind of started to click in my mind that if I wanted to be a public speaker, I should write a book, especially at 19 years old with like no experience. So I wrote a book. It's called Conference Crushing. It hit #1 Amazon bestseller, which I'm 34 now. So 15 years ago, I thought that was insane. I was like, Amazon bestseller, this is nuts. It sold, I think now in total, something like 40,000 copies. And when I say copies, just to be super clear, I'm talking about like 99-cent Kindle copies, some paperback, but far majority is 99-cent Kindle. Regardless, though, once I figured that out, and it did help with public speaking, but again, I just didn't love the public speaking. I started getting asked like hundreds of Facebook messages. People just started reaching out to me, asking me how I did that, the writing, editing, publishing, and the marketing. So that also just kind of clicked. I didn't realize how many people wanted to write books. So I created Authors Unite. That was like 15 years ago. And I started helping people through that process. And now I'll kind of speed up. And obviously, if there's any other questions about the journey, happy to answer them. But essentially, at this point, we've helped around 5,000 people. 4,000 or so has been only marketing. And then the other 1,000 has been the like ghostwriting, editing, publishing, and marketing side of things. And what we specialize in, obviously the publishing side of things, but on the marketing side is the bestseller campaigns. So like New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal when it existed. We did a ton of Wall Street Journal bestseller campaigns. And then I guess last part is like building out book funnels, media and stuff. So getting people on podcasts like this, essentially like the entire marketing for a book and business. A lot of our clients have businesses off the back end of their book. We would handle that for our clients, all for them. So that's basically what we do at Authors Unite and how it came to be.
That's really interesting. And Joe, you highlight something there that I think is a really interesting thing that people always need to be aware of in the self-publishing space, which is a lot of people use their books as a kind of like entry point to sell another service they're doing, like consulting or something like that. If you've got a #1 book on, I don't know, IT consulting, and you also run an IT consulting firm, then it's like it's a good intro to get leads. And so that's an interesting thing from more than just wanting to sell loads of copies. You specifically want to get that bestseller ranking, don't you?
Yeah, I would say like most of our clients, they make an ROI on our services more from, I'd say like two parts. It's the leveraging of the bestseller like brand and using that for speaking or just, overall, just it's kind of like a brand upgrade. And then secondly, if there's some sort of like link or opt-in inside of the book that goes into, maybe it's like a free, 3-day, 4-day course, and then that goes into a paid course, and then, high ticket consulting or something, they'll make their money back from, a huge book launch like that, more so from their back end products selling rather than book royalties. Most of the time. There's some rare occurrences where they make, we had this one book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, by Dr. John Jaquish. I think it has almost like 4,000 Amazon reviews. I don't know the exact sales, but we got him on Wall Street Journal bestseller. And I'm sure his business actually made more than the book itself. But I'm pretty certain he's sold in the hundreds of thousands of copies. And I don't take full credit for that. We just did the bestseller campaign. But I think that obviously helped him catapult. So that's one example where he actually made good money, from the book royalties itself.
I think that's all in the title, right? That it appeals to both sides. People like me, they're like, yeah, weightlifting is a waste of time because I don't like exercising. And then there's the people that weightlift, they're like, weightlifting is a waste of time. That's not true. And either way, they'll read the book, right?
Yeah, it created a lot of debate, I think, in that niche online. And what was interesting about it is, at first I wasn't really sure. It seemed kind of gimmicky to me, to be honest. But then I actually ended up reading this book, and then I actually have his workout equipment at my house right here, and I use it, and it literally works. Like it's super legit. So either way, I think the title did definitely help, and there's kind of a lesson within that, like you were saying, Craig. Like if you can create controversy and be able to, I guess, emotionally deal with that. Because I'm sure some people were saying terrible things about him online from reading that title, like fitness trainers and stuff, because it's kind of taking a shot at their jobs and their livelihood. So, but if you can handle it, it really does help with marketing. It's like a built-in marketing tactic in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I can only imagine.
That's an interesting thing because marketing. My background is in marketing and advertising. I remember having a client years and years ago who said it doesn't matter how much money you spend advertising on marketing a product if people don't want to buy it. So how do you help authors get that? Because you need to have a book that people want to buy. And I think that's something that many self-published authors overlook. Not that their book isn't good, but you have to package it in a certain way. And sometimes it's not that good, or sometimes it's not about something that people want. So how do you tackle that?
Yeah, I think best advice I can give there, and I guess there's a couple parts. One is the packaging, like you said, is super important. And I can't remember his exact terminology, but Seth Godin, he talks about this a lot. It might have been, I can't remember what book it was, or it was a blog post or something, where he did some sort of study or something, and it showed that the packaging of a product was actually more important than the product itself. It was something like that. Now in today's world, I don't know if that fully translates, just due to the fact that if something had amazing packaging but was total crap inside, obviously reviews would start pouring out online. People would start talking. I think eventually it would die. But regardless, packaging is very important. And with a book, it's obviously the book cover. That's the initial thing that people see. And it is, I would say, just as important as to what's inside, because the book cover and the title, subtitle, that's what gets people to actually open the book. And then the other part is, and I got this probably from Gary Vee, so it was just kind of, I guess, in my subconscious or something. But what Gary Vee talks about is essentially like a lot of people will hold information back because they think like, oh, if I give everything away in the book, then there'd be no reason for somebody to hire me to do it for them. When in reality, like 90% of people will read the book, they'll know how to do it, but due to time or just whatever, they won't. And then they'll actually hire you regardless. So point to all that is, I always tell my author clients to just actually give it all away. Like, make that book the best it possibly can be, remove all the fluff, but, you know, ultimately give away all the secrets in there so that it is super profound, so that people, when they read it, they get remarkable insights. They start remarking upon it. That's a Seth Godin thing right there as well. So I always have to give credit. And then it will travel on its own by word of mouth in due time. And then the reality is, most people, even though you're giving away all the secrets inside the book, most people aren't going to do it themselves. Like, if they really want it done, like the CEO of a company, if they want your help with whatever you're offering, like Facebook ads, the reality is most founders of companies, even if the book lays out the exact blueprint to successful Facebook ads, they're not going to spend that time and do it themselves. But what they are going to do is, after reading that book, they're going to be like, oh, this person definitely knows what they're talking about. The proof is within what I just read. Let me hire them and have them do it for me. And I think it's just a different frame, because a lot of people, I think, when they're offering something like consulting or a course on the back end, their kind of natural instinct is like, I can't put it all in the book, like, or they won't buy the other things. And I actually recommend giving it all the way in every format that you can. So I think that's the best advice I could give on that one.
That's actually really, really, really great advice, I think. And that must be one of the reasons why you have authors working with you, because, you know, you can go online and find everything about how to market your books yourself and do it yourself, which could take, you know, years to get right, speaking from personal experience. Or you could go to somebody who knows how to do it. And if you have the finances to be able to do that, I don't think there's any shame in that.
I agree. Yeah. And most of our clients, I think they're like 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs, and they just literally don't have the time. And most of them actually, I think too, even if they did have the time, like you said, it would take years, right? Because to like hit some of these major bestseller lists, like Wall Street Journal, USA Today, I'll just use those as examples. Typically you want to get like 5,000-6,000 sales in a week minimum. So you need a fairly large audience to pull something like that off. And a lot of times, at least my clientele, they're super successful, like in their niche. Say they're like an accountant or they run a marketing agency, but they don't have like a huge email list, let's say, to ensure that they would get 5,000 to 10,000 sales in a week. So it's like the options kind of are, like you said, if you have the money, you can hire us and we'll ensure it happens for you. Or you could spend a few years, right? And then maybe you get it. So I just think for our clientele, the decision is, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's easy to make, just due to the time it would take to build up an audience to be able to do such a thing. It's just easier to pay somebody else to do it. But for the authors that don't have the money to do that, which a majority of self-published authors don't, you know, there are ways to go about it, and you can spend that time, build it up. And in a sense, if you spend those years doing it, it's better to have the assets internally as well. So I just want to make sure I mention that, so that people know, if you don't have the money, there is a path, and actually the end result in a sense is better because you build your own asset, you know, a large email list that you can market to for future books as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of book and author. Like, I guess you're probably dealing primarily with nonfiction, that sort of thing. Do you deal with fiction, or like novels or anything like that as well?
We do, I would say, and again, general estimate, but out of the 5,000 or so we work with, I'd say maybe 300-400 were fiction. So high majority of nonfiction. And for the fiction authors, We would do a lot of USA Today bestseller campaigns, and then the smaller, Amazon, Barnes and Noble and stuff. But typically, and it comes down to that ROI factor, which obviously anybody who buys something for their business, they want to get an ROI. For fiction authors, it's a lot harder because they typically don't have that back end business supporting it. So they're focused solely on the royalties. So it's just, I'm always just honest with them in that like sales call, I guess you could call it. So when I tell them that, like, hey, chances of you getting an ROI on this USA Today bestseller campaign, pretty low, honestly, right? But for a nonfiction author, if you sold 10 clients on your consulting package, you already got it, right? So that's the main difference there.
The strategy must be different too about how you market and promote the books between fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah, I would say when it comes to the bestseller list, it's pretty similar in a sense. But when it comes to, I guess, the ongoing marketing efforts, and this just comes down to the goal of each author. Like for the nonfiction, mostly it's more of like the top of the funnel. Whereas again, for a fiction author, the way I view for fiction authors is you want to have as many amazing books as you can. And it's almost like a built-in funnel inside of Amazon, so that for every book that somebody reads and they like it, you're kind of building like an author brand for all your fiction books. So if somebody buys one, they want to buy the 9 others. 10's a lot, but just saying, like if you had 10 books. So yeah, I guess to answer that, when the bestseller list, they work in a certain way, which I'm sure you're aware of. So the marketing is kind of it's very similar in both, but the ongoing would be a bit different.
Yeah, we have the same advice where we tell authors, and because we mainly work with fiction, and it's like, yeah, it's going to be a lot harder to make money on the first few books, but once you have a lot more books, your marketing gets cheaper, right? And it's like you market this one book, and if people love it, they're going to go in there, see your back catalog, right? And you have those multiple points of entry to yourself as an author, right? They might find you from this book or this book or this book, and then they come in and then they have all the books available. So it's a lot easier than saying, oh, I'm putting all your eggs in one basket and say, oh, I got this one book, and then it's got to appeal and you've got to reach everybody. So yeah.
No, I agree. And I know this is probably, and again, because I'm more in the nonfiction space, but I'm sure the dream for most fiction authors is to have something similar. I know he's like the pinnacle, but like Stephen King or something. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, or you're probably aware of it, but I just, what was it called? The Long Walk.
The one they just made the movie of.
Yeah, the movie.
Yeah, and he has a ton of other, like he has a series. He has an Apple TV series. I forget what that one's called, but he has so many of his books turned into films. So to me, that's also another, like obviously nonfiction, I guess it could get turned into a documentary, obviously, but for fiction, that adds an element of excitement. If I was a fiction writer, of like, if I can really, make these incredible books and have them successful, if I get one movie deal or TV series deal, it seems from watching Stephen King grow, it just seems to snowball, right? And I know it's an outlier, obviously.
Well,
but
it's not necessarily. I mean, there's Colleen Hoover. There's that big beef between who is it? Ryan Reynolds' wife.
I know. I forget her name, but I know you're talking about
Justin Bell. And that was all about a movie from a book written by Colleen Hoover, who was a self-published author. And
amazing,
Stephen King, actually, the reason so much of his stuff gets turned into that, he sells the rights to aspiring young filmmakers for just $1.
Oh, okay. See, you guys know more about this than I do. I didn't know that. That's amazing, because I think he has maybe close to like 10 or something out there. Like I'm at the point with his stuff that I've liked everything I've watched, that whenever I notice it's like from one of his books, I'm definitely going to watch it. So if you can build that brand as a fiction author, or fiction author that gets it turned into movies, then it's just like everything you put out, there's a certain audience that are definitely going to buy in, and it's just awesome. So that's cool. I didn't know. So how does he make a royalty off the back end then?
Well, I think he
like,
makes this. He's made royalties doing everything else and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I think it's only specific short stories and stuff. If he's doing the Dark Tower, then he'll sell that for $500,000 or whatever. But I mean, right now with Netflix and Disney Plus and all of these different streaming services and YouTubers and stuff, there's never been more of an opportunity to get your book turned into a movie or a TV show if it's got that hook.
Yeah, no, I agree. This time, it's definitely the best opportunity. And I think, worst case scenario, which isn't even that bad, but let's say if you got the funding and then all the streaming services said no, which from my understanding, typically it's just like Apple and Netflix are the two kind of hardest ones that say no the most. But to get it on Amazon Prime, I've heard is actually fairly easy. I'm just saying what I've heard there. I don't have experience with that particular outlet, but the point is, worst case, you could throw it on YouTube, and it could, if it's really good, it could take off there. And then at least it's being seen, and then maybe you get some ad revenue. But you're right, it is the best time for that type of thing.
There's a filmmaker I like. He wrote and published a book that you would buy as a digital download on his website, and he made 12 grand from it, which was the budget. So he didn't make any money, but boom, he's actually got it out there. So anyway, but your writing can become a movie.
I view breaking even as a win in this space. I think it's a win. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's lots of points of entry. I mean, and like you said, once you get one out there, you look at George R.R. Martin. He's at the Game of Thrones, and of course, he still hasn't finished that. But a lot of his other stories are now being picked up and turned into movies and miniseries and all that too. Which is one of the big criticisms. He's too distracted. Too distracted to finish Game of Thrones, but yeah, there's and as you said with YouTube, I remember my daughter surprisingly loves the show Cobra Kai, and that started as a YouTube low budget, even though it had all the people from Karate Kid in it. It was like a YouTube thing, and then Netflix picked it up and turned it into a thing. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities now for authors. So yeah. It's a good time to be writing. But on the flip side, there's so much competition, right? So how do you stand out from the competition? And what are the, you have your bestseller campaign. So what are you doing to help somebody become a bestseller?
Yeah, so I can actually answer. I don't know if that was part of the question, but that how to stand out on the movie side. Mm-hmm. And I will just being honest, because I'm very new to that world, but it is pretty cool. We actually just got a deal, like a partnership with the co-founder of Netflix. His name's Mitch Lowe. And this is only a few months ago. So whenever people have questions about that side of things, we bring him on the call. So I don't know all those details, but what stands out from what he has told us with the few clients we're working with in that program is the first thing is it's social media followers, like on all the kind of top social medias. The goal is, and this is a lot, so this kind of makes it sound not obtainable, but he said that to get it to Netflix, because Netflix gets about 2,000 pitches per week. So, you have to stand out when they're getting that many. You want to have around at least 1 million followers combined. So I know that's a ton. But I'm just going by what he's saying. And I'm sure there's people that have gotten on there without that, probably majority. But if you have that and you take the time, the few years, build up that email list and build up your social media followers, that's kind of one of the key things they're looking for. And when he said that, the way I equated it was it seemed very similar to what like a traditional publisher would be looking for. It doesn't have to be 1 million followers, but a traditional publisher or a Netflix, Apple TV, they're looking to see, do you already have this built-in audience that comes with your work to ensure that we're not going to lose money on this deal in a sense. So either way, just wanted to give some stats there. But on the bestseller side of things, I'll quickly kind of run through. NYT is super complicated, so we'd probably need to do a separate show just on that one. I'm sure you guys, that one is really complex, but I can go into it a little. But Amazon, that one's just categorical. You guys may have talked about this on your show before, but Amazon bestseller, when I was super excited 15 years ago, and I still think it is cool to have. It's better to have than not to have, obviously. But what I would say for people listening is like, in the most ideal world, use categories that are, synergistic or that fit for your book, because the whole thing out there is, you have books putting their categories as like, accounting or mowing grass or something, and it's not fitting to their book. And to me, again, it's like, if you're an author and you have an opportunity to become a best-selling author on Amazon and it's not that difficult, it's like, why not do it? So I have no hate towards it. I'm an Amazon bestseller and a Wall Street Journal bestseller. So I think, whatever, they're great. It's just, if you're on a podcast like this and you get asked the question and you're an honest person, you wouldn't want to have to say like, I hit bestseller and mowing grass. So I don't know, maybe that is a low chance of that question coming through, but I don't know, just wanted to point that out. But Amazon hourly algorithm, from my knowledge, and either way, you could look at it at a daily. If you get a few hundred sales in a day, you'll hit, Amazon bestseller in most categories. Barnes and Noble bestseller is basically a few hundred sales in a day, you'll hit BN bestseller. And I'll answer your question in the sense of how. So what we do is, have you guys ever heard of, I'm sure you have BookBub?
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the way to view us on the bestseller front, and obviously now USA Today and NYT, there's additions because of the physical book component, but we have a combined email list of over 5 million people. And I'll explain, this goes into the referral network stuff we were talking about prior to recording, I believe. What I did in the earlier days, once I figured out how Amazon functioned, is I started Googling like ebook promotion sites, and I started reaching out. There's like hundreds, there might even be thousands of them now. There's tons. And I will say, just as like a kind of warning, maybe, I do think some of them may not be what they say they are. I'm not sure. I haven't seen behind the scenes. Just being honest, because, and I'm glad you said that, because I don't know, but I'm just saying, it seems like some of them, you pay them like $50 and then you get like 5 to 10 99-cent ebook sales, and they don't show you the campaign or anything. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, this could be like a family of 5 that's just profiting $45 every time, and then they're just giving you a little rank pump or whatever. I don't know. I don't have proof, but possible. Either way, though, when I realized how Amazon worked in the earlier days of the company, and people started reaching out and asking me to do it for them or with them, I would test out my clients' books against these email list sites that I would find. And I knew if the email list didn't work, I could still get them Amazon bestseller, because I would basically coach them through it as well. And I'd be like, look, you want to have all your friends, colleagues, everybody buy the book on this day. I would have a bunch of my team members all buy it on the same day. So there was kind of like a fail safe there. But essentially what would happen is, one out of every like 25, 30 or something like that, it would like go up really high. Like they'd get like 500 sales or 1,000 sales. And I was like, that was not from me. That was not from the client. That was from this list. So through trial and error, I found a bunch of ones that would consistently perform, within a range. And then after, the company started doing well, I would reach out to them and just say, look, I want exclusivity. Obviously I would word it nicer than this, but I'm just telling you my goal. I would want exclusivity, or I would want to like buy the list. So when I say that 5 million plus list, essentially what it is it's a combination of lists that I have exclusivity with, which I basically like pay rent to in a sense, and then other ones that I've actually bought out from. And so that's how we do the bestseller list campaigns. Like when Wall Street Journal was around, fiction, it's way harder. They actually have a fiction list as well. But for their nonfiction list, if you got 5,500, 6,000, 99-cent ebook sales in a week, you would hit the list pretty much always, or literally always. So I've done literally about 1,000 Wall Street Journal bestseller campaigns with like, literally, I don't think we ever missed, except for the 1 week in November 2023 when the list disappeared. Like it literally disappeared. So we ran the campaign. I was doing 2 per week for like, I don't know, 7, 8 years or something. And we ran it, that both books were doing well. And then we kept refreshing the week after. It would come out on Thursdays or Friday mornings the week after. And it just didn't show. And then it vanished. I forget why, but it went away. It doesn't exist today. So Either way, though, that's how we get all those sales. It's literally just a numbers game. I have all these like smaller email lists that I've partnered with or acquired. And then if we do a major list like USA Today, Wall Street, or New York Times, we mail the whole list. If we're doing just like an Amazon BN, we'll just mail like a smaller segment because you don't really need as many sales, and it has to be within budget. But that's how we do that. And then the physical book side, I can go into that if you want, but it is very different. Like for USA Today, it used to be you could get on with only ebooks. Now you need physical books. And the physical book side is not really my expertise. I have a few partners that help with this. So I'm just being transparent with you guys. Essentially, like from my understanding, the way that the physical book side works is it's kind of like you need a mixture of individual buys and bulk buys, and then they get processed in a certain fashion that have them count, towards the lists and stuff, and have some of the bulk count as individual. So that's the best I can explain it, because obviously I think these partners, they have their secret sauces. So if they told me, then I guess I wouldn't have a need for them. But that's my understanding. So that's the way, at least on the book sale component, which for every list, that's pretty much all that matters, except for New York Times. That one, you need like a certain amount of media. You need a certain amount of books in retail, which is why you really need a traditional publisher to hit NYT. David Goggins is an outlier. I'm sure there's some other ones, but just from our experience of doing a good amount of them, if you try to do it self-published, I can't really name another example except for NYT or David Goggins. Do you guys know about that with NYT, like any other self-published authors that have hit it that you're aware of?
I don't know about self-published authors, but I do know you could, because was it Eric Trump wrote a book, and the Republican National Convention or something got 500,000 copies, and that was enough to get him on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was kind of, there we go. That's how you do it.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, even Mark Dawson was doing that. Was caught doing that for a while back.
He wants to get the #1 on the Times, and so he bought 400 copies of his own book, which he was like, "Oh well, those are the ones that I sign and send out to people." So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'm glad you said that, because the David Goggins thing, that's my understanding, is like it was almost like it was too big to ignore. So like that's kind of why it hit. I don't know for sure, but that's the way it seems to me. But just with that like retail component, from our understanding is there's 5 criteria. There's like a media criteria of like interviews and stuff, social media criteria, ebook sales, physical sales. And then the 5th one is, and then the retail, having the book in retail stores, which, you kind of need a traditional to have it in the physical stores. But again, yes, if you do something like Eric Trump or David Goggins, then I guess you could hit it, self-published as possible.
I bet they didn't make a profit on it though.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, David Goggins, I think he's crushing it, right?
Yeah.
And, but
yeah, sorry, he is. Yeah.
But Eric Trump, the way that seems, I don't know for sure. So allegedly, always got to say that. I don't know, but it seems like that was very organized. Let's put it that way.
So in terms of the Amazon stuff, so we've been hearing lately about Amazon's algorithm changes, their A10 algorithm and all that. And one of the things that is people are talking about is the idea that pure sales are not really king in rank making and the new algorithm. So whereas before, you send all these sales and you can boost your rank, now a lot of it is dependent on other things like social, like how many people outside of the Amazon ecosystem come and view your book and buy your book. Are you seeing any changes recently around, what you're doing, especially if a lot of what you're doing is trying to get those sales on the day or, the week that they publish? Are you seeing anything recently that sort of gives you that sort of feeling that maybe the algorithms changed a bit and things aren't quite as straightforward as they used to be?
No, yeah, I do. I will say, because there's so many categories, like it hasn't, I'll just preface with this and saying, like, it hasn't affected our clients' ability to get #1 in categories, but the overall rank from like, I'll say maybe like 5 years ago to today, that's where we're seeing the difference, which is exactly what you're saying. But I'm just saying there's still like, you can still get bestseller regardless, but it seems with only sales, but it does seem that, like I'll just give you an example. We did this one book, Caesar Pina. This was the best we ever had on Amazon. We literally got him #1 in the whole Kindle store. So not a category, but literally in the whole Kindle store. It's crazy.
Wow.
Caesar Pina, I'm blanking on the title, but just by that author, you could look it up. This was maybe 5-6 years ago. And the sales that we're getting our clients now compared to then are very similar. And now if we were to get, I think he got in that week, it was maybe like 17,000 sales. It's an estimate. I think it was somewhere around there. Now what we're noticing is that overall rank is like, it could be in like the mid hundreds overall. And it might be maybe because of what you're saying, like maybe the Amazon algorithm is accounting for maybe how many pages are read, the reviews, like there's other elements to it.
Yep.
So, but that's the only thing I've noticed. So basically when we do smaller launches, we used to be very like loose with it, like put them in any category, we'll be good. And now we actually have to, really look at making sure we put them in one category at least that is fairly easy to make as a fail safe, because the ranking system is not working to our benefit as well as it used to, I guess. But I don't know exactly why. Maybe you have more info on like what the changes are, but I've just noticed the difference in overall rank is what I've noticed.
It seems very
Yeah, I think-
transparent of you to say that, which is, I mean, I know we set the ethical bar low with Eric Trump, but I mean, it's like you do seem to be a very transparent about, what you can and can't do. And you do seem to be taking an ethical approach to it in terms of, we're not just going to stick you in like basket making as a category to get you to #1. We're going to make sure it's appropriate.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot, like you said, reviews actually do matter to the new algorithm as well, and some are even saying the quality of reviews. So maybe they're using AI to determine some of those things, and pulling people in from different sources. Although if your list is it could be considered a different source other than already existing Amazon customers. But so you mentioned that. People that are selling the nonfiction are going to be making their money back on, selling their consulting or whatever, but fiction authors would be harder. So how much is like a bestseller? If an author said, hey, I have a book, regardless of what, maybe it's not regardless of the genre, maybe it's different per genre, but what kind of costs are they looking for, or are they looking at when hiring you to do that?
Yeah. So I'll go through each list briefly, and I'll give a little of like side notes, because the first one I'll definitely, maybe I'll get a little pushback, but just going to be transparent. So for the Amazon bestseller, we charge $9,500, and the reason for that is because we're not doing that little category trick. So to be transparent for everybody listening, like you could do it yourself, honestly. And also there's other firms out there that they probably charge $2,000, $3,000, but I think, they might be doing, not everyone, but they might be doing the category trick. When we do it, the reason we charge $9,500 is I'm literally paying my email list partners to mail out mass amounts. So for an Amazon bestseller, we're sending, typically it's above 500,000 emails out for that one. And then you'll get anywhere from like 500 to 1,500 sales seems to be the kind of range there. 99-cent Kindle. So you're not going to get an ROI directly, but we are guaranteeing that you hit it. BN, we charge $15K. Wall Street Journal, we used to charge $60K. Same with USA Today. When USA Today was only ebooks, it kind of worked in tandem with Wall Street Journal. Like if you hit one, you typically hit the other. But now that there's the physical book component, the way that we work USA Today now is if we get a client that could generate like thousands of physical books and we just have to handle the ebook side, then it's $60,000. But if we have to do both, it depends on the price of the physical book, but it could go anywhere from like, I'd say 175 to 275K. So it's a big jump because of having to put through thousands of physical books, which obviously, yeah. I wish it was still 60K as a whole. Obviously, that was easier to sell. And then NYT, and then I'll say actually just one last thing on USA Today. Say if you could guarantee that your list or your audience could get 2,000 sales, and you only like physical, and you only needed a little bit of help from us, it would be like a custom quote, right? We would figure out based on that week what is the historical data in that time frame of sales to ensure a USA Today hit, and then we would just fulfill whatever you couldn't fulfill, and then obviously charge for that fulfillment. And then NYT, that one ranges dramatically just depending upon what the client can do and then what we need to do. But if we had to do it all for them, some people jump out of their seat on this one, so I was just prep that, but it's typically in the low millions. Like, it's expensive. It's because you have to 20,000 plus physical sales, plus having all those books, another 20,000 in retail, and then getting on like 100 podcasts. There's so many elements. If people are interested, I could email you like our 5 criteria we go by. And then if people want to see, you could put it in the show notes. But when you see the 5 criteria, then maybe that number won't seem as crazy just because of literally the amount of like high level media that we want you to be in to give the highest chance. And last thing I'll just say is, like, we guarantee all of them except for NYT. So all the other ones, essentially, if you get the sales, USA Today, there's some nuances, like you want the sales in some different bookstores. But essentially, they can all really be guaranteed, whereas NYT just can't, because in its nature, it's an editorial list. So even if we hit all 5 of the criteria, NYT, like there's examples of this. Ed Milet, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Ed Milet before. He's a nonfiction author. There was a story going around a couple years ago that apparently he sold over 100,000 copies in like a few weeks, and he missed NYT, and he leans right politically. So the theory was it might be because of him being super outspoken about that. I don't know if there's truth to that, but it does seem that NYT, in a sense, there is criteria. In another sense, it seems like each week they might just get into a room and be like, hey, who do we want to be on this list, kind of, but maybe, I don't know if you guys have more.
I think that I believe is accurate. And I think part of it is you don't want to have like a Hugo Award situation where there's a voting campaign and suddenly your winner is Hounded in the Butt by My Own Butt by Chuck Tingle as like the number 1 bestseller, which is something that could absolutely happen. And New York Times is like, we might not want to have that. So
yeah,
no, that makes sense.
That's
I agree
amazing true story. Listen, those numbers are pretty crazy for the self-publisher, so I definitely see, and like you said, even for Amazon, 9,500 for a fiction author, it's not as easy to make that kind of money, depending on the price point that you're at when you're making even when you're making 60% or whatever. But I mean, and it also depends on how long it carries through after the promotion. If they're going to continue at the top and make organic sales, and that's the kind of thing that gets them discovered, then that's a drop in the bucket, right? But if they're taking a flyer I think for authors that have a big catalog, it's more worth the risk than somebody who's new, for sure.
I agree with everything you said, and I think that's in a sense, kind of the gamble on the client side, because a lot of times what I'll tell my clients is like, I can guarantee success in the short term, right? By like hitting the list. And it depends on how you look at success, but just meaning by hitting the list. But the long term, it really, that is just, I don't think there is a way to guarantee that, obviously. So that's kind of, and I think the gamble, as we've mentioned a few times, for a fiction author is more. Whereas for the nonfiction, if we sell 1,000 books on that launch and they get 50 to 100 opt-ins off of like a link that they have in the ebook, and then 5 of them become clients, that 9,500, they get an ROI on it. But for the fiction author, it really is dependent on how long it stays at the top, and if people start talking about it, more buys of the book. So, But yeah, just wanted to mention that.
No, that now, unfortunately, we've reached the top of the hour, so we have to wrap things up. But Tyler, this has been a fascinating conversation. This has really given, like, I think a lot of listeners a different viewpoint on marketing and book things. So before we go, could you let everybody know where they can find out more about you, more about Authors Unite, and all of that stuff? Market yourself,
Sure.
which you have a talent for.
Thank you. And thank you both for having me on. I really appreciate it. The easiest way is just the website, authorsunite.com. And if you have any questions, we have like an intercom, chat thing there. So you can just put the questions there and I'm happy to answer them.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put a link down below in the description of this video. So scroll on down there, click on that link and go and check out Authors Unite. And while you're down there, you will pass that big empty comment box. So leave a comment, leave Tyler a comment, let him know how much you've appreciated everything he's shared with us today. And if not, you could write your favorite New York Times bestseller. Do you want to be a New York Times bestseller? Leave a comment. We love reading them. We really appreciate every single one. There's also that subscribe button if you haven't already, that like button, and there's that little bell icon you can click to get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked. And of course, there will be a new episode of Fully Booked this time next week. So until then, cheerio.